Israel, a small country geographically, has had an outsized role in global affairs since its establishment. Its growth in terms of territory and influence has been the focus of intense scrutiny, particularly regarding the territories it has captured and the countries that contest its right to control certain lands. This video will explore how Israel's borders have changed since its creation, which countries they've conquered territory from, and which countries still contest these territories today. To understand how Israel has grown to its current size, we have to begin in 1947. The birth of Israel, 1947 to 1948. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a plan to partition the region of Palestine, which was under British control, into two separate states, one Jewish and one Arab. This plan was accepted by the Jewish population, who had long sought a homeland, but was rejected by the Arab states and the Palestinian Arab population. They saw the partition as a foreign imposition and an unfair division of land, with 56% allocated to the Jewish state, despite Jews making up only about a third of the population. Despite being outnumbered and surrounded, Israel not only defended itself, but also expanded its borders beyond what was originally allocated in the UN partition plan. By the time the war ended in 1949, Israel had secured key areas such as West Jerusalem and additional parts of the Negev desert. Although ceasefires and armistice agreements were reached, no comprehensive peace settlement was made, and the Arab states continued to refuse to recognize Israel's existence. The Suez Crisis, 1956. The next major territorial conflict came in 1956, during the Suez Crisis. Tensions were high between Israel and Egypt, particularly as Egypt, under the leadership of President Gamal Abdel Nasser, had been blockading Israeli shipping and increasing hostility. When Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, a key global shipping route, Britain and France, who had significant economic interests in the canal, conspired with Israel to launch a military intervention. In October 1956, Israel invaded Egypt, capturing the Sinai Peninsula and advancing towards the canal. While this invasion showcased Israel's growing military strength, it was short-lived. Under pressure from the United States and the Soviet Union, Israel, Britain, and France were forced to withdraw. The Six-Day War, 1967. Israel's most significant territorial expansion came in 1967 during the Six-Day War. In the lead-up to the conflict, tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors, particularly Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, had been steadily increasing. Egypt had again blockaded Israeli shipping and mobilized troops near Israel's borders. In response, Israel launched a series of preemptive airstrikes, which led to a rapid and overwhelming military victory. In just 6 days, Israel defeated the armies of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. More importantly, Israel captured vast swaths of territory. From Egypt, Israel took the entire Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip, occupied territories and international disputes. After the Six-Day War, Israel held a vast amount of territory compared to its pre-war borders. But these lands also became the focal point of international disputes and conflict. The Sinai Peninsula. Israel occupied the Sinai Peninsula for over a decade following the 1967 war. However, in 1979, after years of negotiations, Israel agreed to return the Sinai to Egypt as part of the historic Camp David Accords, which resulted in the first peace treaty between Israel and an Arab state. The Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip, a small coastal region, remains one of the most densely populated and troubled areas in the world. After occupying Gaza in 1967, Israel withdrew its settlements and military presence in 2005. However, the Strip remains under a blockade by Israel and Egypt and is governed by Hamas, a Palestinian militant group that frequently engages in conflict with Israel. The West Bank. The West Bank, home to millions of Palestinians, is still largely under Israeli occupation. Although parts of the West Bank are administered by the Palestinian Authority, Israel has continued to build settlements in the region, which has sparked international condemnation. East Jerusalem. Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem in 1980 has been one of its most controversial moves. The Golan Heights. The Golan Heights, which Israel annexed in 1981, is another strategic and disputed region. Syria continues to claim the Golan Heights, although it remains under Israeli control. Which countries want to take over territories? Israel's occupation of these territories has led to ongoing conflict with several countries and non-state actors, most notably Iran. Iran is Israel's most vocal adversary. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Iran has called for the elimination of Israel and supports groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, which frequently engage in armed conflicts with Israel. Iran views Israel as an illegitimate state, occupying Arab lands, particularly Jerusalem. Syria. Syria has never accepted Israel's control over the Golan Heights. Although there have been periods of negotiation over the return of the region, the civil war in Syria has shifted the focus away from this dispute. Lebanon. Lebanon, through the militant group Hezbollah, has been in a state of conflict with Israel for decades. Hezbollah receives support from Iran and views Israel as occupying lands that belong to the Arab world. Palestinian territories. The most immediate and persistent conflict is with the Palestinian people. Palestinians demand an independent state that includes the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. The two-state solution, which envisions Israel and Palestine coexisting as separate states, has been the primary goal of international diplomacy. Israel's diplomatic breakthroughs. In recent years, Israel has made surprising diplomatic gains. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, saw Israel normalize relations with several Arab countries, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. However, despite these breakthroughs, the conflict with Palestinians and other regional powers like Iran remains unresolved. The future of Israel's borders, particularly in relation to the West Bank and East Jerusalem, continues to be a major source of tension, both within the region and on the international stage. Conclusion. Israel's growth in terms of territory and influence has been shaped by war, diplomacy, and strategic alliances. From its founding in 1948 to its territorial expansions in 1967, Israel's history is one of survival, conflict, and negotiation. While Israel has conquered significant territories in past wars, its continued occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights remains a source of conflict with neighboring countries and the Palestinian people. The future of Israel's borders is still uncertain. Peace with Egypt and Jordan has been achieved, but the unresolved Palestinian issue and the hostility from countries like Iran and Syria mean that Israel's territorial disputes are far from over. Whether through diplomacy or further conflict, the question of Israel's borders will continue to shape the Middle East for years to come.